Hello folks, it's Wednesday. It's time for After Hours Woodworking. I am your host, Chad Stanton, and on this show I talk about the jobs that I got going in my shop as a professional furniture maker. I will talk to you about some email questions that come in. I try and give you the best answers for it. And sometimes I do a segment called Should You Own It?, which is a product suggestion for you. Well, today I'm going to kind of intertwine all of these, so I may not follow that order, all right? But what I got going on in the shop this week, I had a couple of jobs where they weren't really woodworking. A really good customer of mine I had for years. They had an electrical problem. It sounded like it was going to be easy. The light wasn't coming on, and they replaced the light bulbs. Right? Should be pretty simple. I just figured something came loose up in the fixture. Yeah, no. Wasn't at the switch. Wound up having to climb up in the attic, where guess what? They just had a whole bunch of insulation blown in. Yeah. So I was crawling around in that, and lo and behold, that was the problem. Whoever the electrician was had a junction box up there, didn't have a cap on it, had the wire sticking out, and evidently when they blew the insulation, it must have been just enough to move a wire, had to come out, and so easy fix considering the fact that I had to crawl around in that. But in the actual shop here, I've been busy working on some tabletops for a local restaurant. I'm just about done with them. I'm going to start doing the finish on them next. But this was kind of interesting for me. So the tabletops are made up of some plywood, some CDX plywood, some MDF, which I hate, and some solid wood. And I'm gluing most of that, but I wanted to make sure that I had some extra reinforcement to it, so I was going to put some screws in. And of course, you know, Mcfeely's is a sponsor of the show, and I learned from their website that Mcfeely's has a screw thread called a Super 8. I wasn't familiar with this. So I know, like on pocket screws, you have fine thread and coarse thread. The coarse is for like softer woods. The fine thread is for like harder woods. But I didn't know what a Super 8 was. Well, the Super 8 is a really aggressive thread that's made specifically for dealing with that type of plywood. So this was great. But I got online on the website and I couldn't find specifically a size that I was looking for. I was having a little bit of trouble. And then it dawned on me, you know, I'm familiar with their product, but I was not familiar with their customer service. So I didn't tell them who I was. I just called, acted like a first-time customer, and I even recorded it, the footage. I happened to be out here in the shop, had the camera rolling. Just recorded it, and wow, I could not believe the awesome customer service I got. First, Tracy answered the phone, very pleasant. I told her what I was trying to do, told her what I was looking for. She said that she was going to get me into a technical department because she wasn't specifically familiar with exactly what I was doing. So when she put me on hold, there was some really cool hold music, good dancing music. And then they transferred me to, I think his name was Don. Great guy. I mean, I'm telling you, we probably spent 20 minutes on the phone, him asking me specific questions to what I'm building. And yes, he's got woodworking background skills, which helps. He's not just a tech guy on screws. He can relate the screw information to specifically what I'm trying to do. And he got a screw for me. I ordered them. What's so cool about this is the threads on it. The threads on it have that Super 8, right? So it's going to be aggressive and it's going to hold. But on the chamfered head here, right up on that chamfer, there's little tiny teeth on that. So it will countersink, it'll cut the wood fibers, and it doesn't leave like that mushrooming problem you have behind. So it's self-tapping, aggressive threads, and the teeth so it doesn't mushroom. Really cool. Now, I know you guys are saying, oh, Chad, you're just doing this because they're their sponsor, they're making you. No, they're not. No, they're not. I was real curious how their customer service was, because I thought, you know, I'm telling you folks to support the sponsors, and whums if you called and had terrible service. So I was real curious, and man, they passed with flying colors. So anyhow, there you go. That's maybe one of the segment of Should You Own It, these screws from Mcfeely's. Okay, so I also was with Les this week. I go over there 2 days a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. And Les was not really up to doing much. The one day he couldn't even get out of his chair. However, the other day on Thursday, he was very excited. See, a couple weeks ago, actually a couple months ago, Les has been talking about wanting this new Makita miter saw for his shop. And let me tell you, Les has got every tool under the sun. But he just kept talking about this Makita saw. And he said to me the other week, he goes, you know, Chad, he goes, you know, I'll probably never use this miter saw. He goes, but I still think I want it. He goes, what do you think? I said, Les, I'm going to tell you the same thing I tell my wife. You know, if we can purchase it and we don't go in debt and we've got the money for it, buy whatever you want. Well, that's all it took. He bought the saw. So when I got there, it was delivered. It was in the box. I took it down, assembled it, put it on. Had to modify his miter saw stand so it would work in line with everything. It was kind of a little bit involved, especially the dust collection on it. It's got really kind of a weird, funky dust collection. It collects it up at the top where the saw blade is. It also collects it down at the bottom where it would be cutting and discharging from the wood. So it's got this crazy contraption. And then Les wanted that hooked to his giant dust collection system in his shop. So it didn't have the right fittings. I had to go out and get some stuff and kind of modify the fitting. But anyway, when it was done, it was like leaving zero dust left behind. It was really nice. It's pretty cool. Pretty nice saw. I think his wife might be a little mad at me for suggesting, you know, that a sick man buys a saw. But hey, you all know where I'm coming from. It just feels good to be in our shop, and that's what Les likes doing. So now, I'm saying this on behalf of Les. I wasn't going to talk about this. I said I wasn't going to talk about it, but I had a book come out a few weeks ago. It's from when I did the I Can Do That series over at Popular Woodworking, and it was 20 of my actual furniture projects did. And I wasn't going to talk about it, but Les read the book, and Les was so impressed with the clear, easy understanding of it, loved the projects, was really impressed that this is made with minimal tools. You get a jigsaw, a circular saw, a miter saw. I don't get a table saw. I don't get a band saw. I don't get those nicer things. No, it's all done with basic tools. He was really impressed with how nice the furniture pieces were and how well it was written. And he told me I should be promoting this book. So, doing that for Les. If you guys are interested, you know, I'm sure you can find it online. It's not hard. And I think it's even in bookstores too, coming out. So anyhow, there you are, my book. Okay, so I'm going to move on to some viewer emails. So the first question that came in was from Bill Crispin. Bill is building a bunch of desks for his family, and Bill's question had to do with some tapered legs. Now, this is just a sample to give you guys an idea of what's going on here. So Bill made the legs where obviously it's wider at the top, narrow at the bottom, and it's done on all four sides. And after he tapered them, he realizes he thinks his desk is a little bit too tall, so he wants to lower it. And so he wants to cut these. Well, now he can't just stick it in his miter saw or his table saw and make a cross cut with it, because he's got two angles going on. Yes, it's the same angle, but it's on all four sides. So I thought this would be a great time for me to show you how you can fix that, how you can cut it, even after you've got it tapered. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to stand it up, and you would take a bevel, and you set the bevel to whatever angle this is on here. Now, bevels are a great tool to own. You know, you can, I pick them up at garage sales everywhere I go, but, you know, you can buy them at Home Depot and Lowe's and stuff like that, but just get one that's good. If the locking nut doesn't hold the blade tight, you're going to get frustrated with it. All right, so now I have my angle, whatever this is. In fact, I'm going to make it more extreme just so you all can understand. Let's say that that's the taper of the leg. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my miter saw. And I'm going to put this against the back, and my blade, I would line up with what that angle would be, okay? Now, that's only the first cut, remember, or the first angle. Remember, we got it on all four sides. So if I was to make this cut, the leg still wouldn't be right. The bottom of it was still, the angle wouldn't be right. So the next thing I do, if you have a compound miter saw, all right, you would tilt the back of your saw to this same degree. So we turn the miter saw bed to this angle, and then you would tilt the compound to this angle. Then you can make the cut. It'll be flat, and your leg will stand up fine. What if you don't have a compound miter saw? What if you just simply have just a miter saw? You can't tilt the back. Well, what you would do then is find the center of your leg. So just divide this in half, divide that in half, find the center of that leg, and then you would take shims of some sort. And what you want to do is you want to raise this up. And so you would measure, and I like to use a pair of dividers, much more accurate than a tape measure. But I'm going to measure from back here to the front, and I'm going to keep putting that shim in until it's now parallel with the bed of my miter saw. Now I can make that cut, and then the leg will stand up just fine. All right, so is that clear? Clear as mud? Hope that helps you out there, Bill. And don't feel bad that you're changing the design on it, or maybe you didn't think of it ahead of time what length you want the leg. That's how we learn how to become better woodworkers, is through our mistake. Okay, the next email question came from Ray Hendrich. And Ray was asking, what's the difference between finger joints and box joints? Honestly, this is a little confusing, because if you look online or if you look at different things, some will call it the same thing. A finger joint is a box joint, just the size of the interconnecting locking spaces. And then others, it's a completely different. So what I'm familiar with, a finger joint is if you have like a scarf joint, a long board you're trying to put together, join together. It cuts like fingers. They're kind of almost like V-shaped, and so they go together. You get a lot of good gluing strength in it, and it continues the board going on. That's my knowledge of an actual finger joint. A box joint is where you see them on the corners, boxes, carcasses, and so on. However, depending on the book, depending on the magazine you're reading, depending on the blog you see online, some will call even this a finger joint. And what they'll refer to the finger joint is the size of the little pieces. So if it's like a 1/4 inch and under, they might call it a finger joint, and if it's like a 1/4 inch and thicker, they'll call it a box joint. You know, either way, you can kind of see how the terms get kind of crossed over and get a little muddy and confusing. But generally, if I'm going to do a finger joint, as I refer to it, that's a router bit that goes in my router table and cuts it, and then I can mate the pieces. If I'm going to do a box joint, I can set that size on the width on my stacked dado, and I'll cut it out on the table saw. So hope that becomes a little bit more clear for you there, Ray. Okay, so question of the week. Last week I asked you all kind of like what your general budget was for buying tools. And the reason I was asking that is because it gives me a good idea of where to do a product suggestion to you then. And it seems like most of the viewers are, how can I say, they spend maybe a couple $100 a year. A lot of them look for used tools online or garage sales and flea markets. Some have tools that have been passed down from them from other family members. So it seems like the range is kind of where I am. I've got my tools set up. I don't really need or want any new tools. If I do buy something, it's usually something smaller. So I'm going to try and keep this to right around the $50, maybe $100 price range, but probably the $50 and under area. So in the future, when I do segments for tool suggestions, we all should be able to afford it, and it's something that hopefully will work and perform for you just as well it would work or didn't work for me. Okay, that's it for this week. I will be in Huntington, West Virginia, Friday, Saturday for the Woodworking Festival there. It's the Heritage Farms and Museum Woodworking Festival. It's going to be a great time. There's going to be several woodworking artists out there, people doing carvings, people doing a blacksmithing. You'll be able to see things like how they used to make brooms and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to be doing a couple demonstrations myself out there, one on mortise and tenons, which I know we've talked about, doing a video series here. I'm also going to be doing the three-legged little stool that you can make with some wood on a shaving horse and so on. So if you're in the area, come on out. I'll have a link there at the bottom in case you're interested. If you have the email question, feel free to write me at woodshoppingtime@gmail.com. As always, thank you so much for watching. And of course, don't forget, go dance now, people.